Hey folks, welcome to Trevor's Talks, and I'm your host, Jim Horn. Today we're going to dive into Grand Traverse County's mounting courtroom backlog and the proposal to add a probate judge, a second probate judge. We'll unpack how Michigan Supreme Court data shows our local probate and circuit courts are underjudged, leading to months-long delays for urgent family and criminal cases. So stay tuned as we hear from the judges and commissioners about the cost, community impact, and what comes next in this multi-year process to bring more timely justice to our region. And you might remember we had the Grand Traverse County prosecutor on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she alluded to the fact that it was a very difficult process getting young lawyers to come up and be prosecutors in Grand Traverse County. So this all ties together. So let's get started. Okay, folks, the first up here is Judge Whitten, and she is beginning to outline some of the problems that are over at the probate court. So let's listen up.
So it can be really difficult to schedule hearings in a timely fashion when there just isn't enough space. And so we believe it would be, beneficial to our community to have another judge who, available to hear those cases. So that's really why we're here. I think in your packet, we kind of break down the costs associated with that. For a probate court judge, an elected probate court judge, their salary is reimbursed by the state.
Okay, so the salary for the judge is reimbursed by the state. However, you need a court reporter or something like that and a few other positions. I think there are 3 other additional positions that this is expense the county would incur. So let's listen to Judge Whitten again.
The county would be responsible for if the judge elected to get county benefits. So that's kind of the funding mechanism. We believe we would need another court recorder or reporter. We don't need both. It's one or the other, just to clarify that, depending on which route we wanted to go. Likely another office specialist position and potentially staff attorney as well. So those are the costs associated with it.
Okay, so you've got the request from Judge Whitten, but I think this next piece up is extremely interesting. This is what happens when we don't have enough judges. And obviously, as I said earlier on, we don't have enough prosecutors. So let's listen to this judge talk about the timeline on cases, what happens when we get backed up.
So if a criminal case comes in today, we're looking at spring of next year before we're going to be able to handle that. And really, the criminal docket is supposed to move the most quickly, which should tell you what the impact is on the civil docket. The civil docket is equally pressured. Those cases typically take longer. They're expected to take longer, obviously, because we're dealing with somebody's rights when it comes to criminal matters. We move those quickly. But even so, that delay for our taste is too long. We'd like to see it sped up. Adding another judge would do that. That would probably be the most important immediate impact in circuit court. I know probate court is having similar issues. I'll let Judge Whitten speak to that.
Sure. I think it's across the board because I handle a lot of different types of cases. I think all of us handle the domestic relations cases. And one thing that we've talked about with those is, it's important when a child, there's no custody order maybe at the beginning of a divorce, or a parent has a child and is withholding a child. If they can't get to court for 3 months, 6 months, that impacts our analysis. So we have to look at who has the established custodial environment. Well, one parent was withholding the child while the other parent waited. And so they're getting credited, they have an advantage. So I think that is a huge issue with our custody cases. It does take too much time right now. Same thing for our abuse and neglect cases. Those are on very strict timelines for funding purposes, and it's difficult to schedule those within the time guidelines based on the docket space available. We have to prioritize those, so we do, but it is really difficult. PPO hearings, if there's a motion to terminate, those should be heard within 14 days. So you can see the time constraints there are really, really difficult.
Unfortunately, what I'm hearing here, and if you get tied up into the legal system here in Grand Traverse County, you could be waiting a long time to get your case heard. Anyway, Commissioner Nelson has some comments.
Yeah, thank you. I look at this as a customer service issue, which is, I think, how I try to look at these things. And I think about if you are a member of this community and you're waiting to February or March or April to get sometimes a very serious matter, family matter, whatever, handled, that's an issue that is landing on here, and you guys are having to deal with. We need to look at. We can't hire a consultant. We can't bring in extra people. We can't hire a contractor, which is what we would look at in maybe some other departments. But in this department, we have to follow the process that's there. So I would also be in support of it. Further information, I think, is helpful for us which you will be developing, and it'll help for your case down the road.
Okay, so obviously Commissioner Nelson is commenting on the fact that we do have to wait a long time for a case. So then up next is Commissioner Henschel. He's asking, who would be ever opposed to something like this? Well, you're going to listen to this. This process is complicated, folks, so just hang in there. But here's what Commissioner Henschel asked, and then the judge responds.
So there's areas of the state of Michigan being overserved, and they want to keep it that way while we're paying the same amount of tax dollars into the pot and being underserved. So
that's true.
Locally, it's very unlikely anyone in Grand Traverse County would be opposed to this.
I think you're right. What often happens, though, in terms of reorganization like this, is the Supreme Court watches the calendar, so they know which judges are retiring and where from. And oftentimes what they'll do is simply terminate a position where they have a judge that's retiring so that they don't run into a sitting judge that they would have to eliminate.
Okay. So if that isn't difficult, then I want to let you listen to the judge talk about the process, because the process is very laborious. That's to get a new judge. It isn't just the Grand Traverse County Commission says, oh, let's have a new probate judge. It works. It's a lot more difficult.
It's a long process that involves all three branches of government. So if we get the nod from the county, then the next step for us would be obviously to go through this secondary review at the Supreme Court. We don't know their decision-making process. It's their process. It's not something that we're involved in. We're submitting materials to them, obviously. We're answering their questions, but so are the other places around the state that are either potentially gaining or losing judges. And then the Supreme Court would make a recommendation to the legislature. And that's where things get a little fishy, because we don't know whether or not the legislature would approve a judge to be transferred, because typically they don't add judges. They move judges from areas in the state where there's an saturation of judges to places where they need judges, like Grand Traverse County. So it becomes a political process. And then obviously once the legislature has worked through that, then we would go to the governor. And if the governor approved, there would be an election in 26 for a judge to start January of 27. So we are at the very front end of this process, but we all agree that it really doesn't make sense for us to go forward unless Grand Traverse County says, you know what, this is a good idea.
So there you have it, folks. Quite frankly, the system as I see it, whether it's from the criminal prosecution aspect or from the judicial aspect, the system is under duress, unfortunately. And that's because obviously the county has grown and it needs more legal assistance, whether it's from the judicial branch or from the prosecution branch. Hey, folks, I thought you'd be very interested in this. I'm Jim Horn. This is Traverse City. Have yourself one great day.